A-League attendances are very low, as we've seen recently. Everybody criticises it. Well, there's lots of factors to do with it, but I think there's three main ones. The first one of the three, I think there's not enough promotion and too much criticism of the A-League or of Australian football. It's never really promoted like other sporting codes are, and it really leaves you with a question, does the media have a vested interest in other sports? Well, Stadic's interview a couple months ago should provide some insight on that and issue an answer to any questions you may have.
All I hear is the greatest game of all. And the NRL people pump up their own sport all the time. I see Peter V'landys, he's an advocate for his game, he's passionate about his game, he's advocate for his product, and we don't do any of that. We're infighting all the time. We're like two seagulls fighting over one chip. We've got nothing and we fight over it.
So in that clip, Alan Stadich was talking about over-criticism of the sport by its own people. I know it was 2 months ago, it was last year, but I think it's obviously still very relevant. He was also talking about how much of a spectacle the Sydney derby was, and he was talking about how much potential there is for every game in the A-League to look like that. I mean, we definitely do have that potential. We've seen in the past, and of course for derbies and games like that and grand finals, how much fans we can bring. We've also seen in trial games against European teams like Wrexham versus Wellington and Wrexham versus Sydney FC. There was a lot of fans there. So there's definitely the fans, people who like football in Australia, just that nobody really seems to be coming to the games or really interested in it. And that kind of brings me on to the next problem, and I think this is the biggest problem. It's the kind of broadcasting and media side of it. It went from everything at Foxtel to fragmented into all these different sources such as Paramount Plus and Channel 10 and all of this. That's kind of why when the Australian Championship was on SBS, it kind of was celebrated so much. It was on free to air. The games used to be on Foxtel at the pubs and all that, and you could just go and watch it. And then when you take it off that, it just turns off all the casual supporters, and it really brings the visibility of the game down. Bruce Jitte describes this much better than I do on the Suited and Booted podcast, so we're going to play that clip and you can kind of see for yourself.
What do you think is the best play from here? It's a difficult situation, but
I just think there needs to be that long-term approach. Everyone needs to put their knives back in their little satchel, and really the game as one is much stronger. It is, because you'll have fluctuations. You know, there was a period where the A-League was absolutely flying, right? We all know when that was, 14, 15, 16, 17, around there, where, you know, you had Shinji Ono and Heskey and Del Piero, and crowds were strong and viewership was strong, and, you know, it wasn't as fragmented media landscape, so everyone had Fox. You could argue the A-League was stronger then, right? And now it's not as strong. You know, if you're all as one, you can have different parts of your business stronger than the other, but it all comes out in the wash. Overall, really strong. Grassroots is going great, yada, yada. When it's fragmented, then you can sort of leave a group out on the island. Like, that's a you problem, guys. You know?
So as you saw there, he pretty much just said what I said, except much better and more concisely. That's kind of the point I want to get across about the media landscape. Of course, in the same media landscape, there's the promoting other sporting codes more than football, because when football is promoted, it's only shown because of something like crowd violence. And that brings us onto our next kind of problem. It's police overreach in football. I don't think this is as much as a problem as the other two, or at least our last one, but I think it is still one of the biggest problems out of all of them. Football can be perceived as violent because of the active support, because they're loud and they can sometimes be drunk and disorderly. In the essence of it, they're just expressing support for their team. And when you try and police football like you would a pub or a protest or a riot, because when you police a riot, you got to be physical, you got to kind of do all these things and treat them like you would a riot. And when you do that in football, what do you expect is going to happen? It's like goes full circle, it's a loop. You treat them like that can only result in tension and therefore violence, and that's because they're automatically assuming it. That's how over-policing causes smaller crowds. But how come they're automatically assuming this? Because you definitely see crowd violence in other games like NRL and AFL, so how come football has this kind of agenda against it? Well, we kind of have to delve into Australian football history a little bit for that. When European migrants came in around the 50s and mid to late 20th century, football and therefore footballers were automatically categorised a certain way because football for the most part came to Australia with the influx of post-war immigrants, post-war European immigrants, and they were usually associated as ethnic and unruly and un-Australian, and therefore footballers who came with the game were called that as well, and football was associated with that as well. This book here, Shields, Wogs and Poofters by Johnny Warren. It's Johnny Warren's 2002 autobiography and also the incomplete biography of Australian soccer, and it kind of goes into that issue about kind of the agenda against football because of the European migrants, and it's actually kind of behind the title. So this excerpt from the book describes this quite well, and I believe it is entirely prevalent today, so just listen to this. One only has to scan the national newspapers to get the feeling that the editors consider the sport a minor one and not worthy of much coverage, except, of course, for the occasional incident of crowd trouble where there is always a camera available and a reporter ready with a pen poised. The book goes into much more detail about that topic and also so much more, and it's just a great book in general about Australian football and about Johnny Warren, and it's definitely a must-read book for any Australian sports fan. So there's always going to be violence in sport, including football, and what we can do about that is we can condemn it and we can follow the law accordingly and issue bans accordingly. Don't use it as justification to scapegoat the entire sport of football as a problem. For our next segment, the rumour mill is up and running, along with plenty of done deals as the transfer news develops. The Wanderers have signed 33-year-old Harrison Delbridge from Incheon United in South Korea. He was recently released, so he'll be on a free. He played in the past for Melbourne City. I remember he got 3 red cards for Melbourne City one season. Another Wanderers rumour, they were rumoured to have signed winger Ryan Fraser from Southampton. I do want to quickly say it was a complete hoax, it was made up, and it was proven to be so. And I kind of suspected that because it was really only reported by like fan outlets, fan pages on social media, but I can't say I wasn't disappointed when I found out that it was fake. Next up, it's understood that the Mariners want to get Jai Rose back from the Wanderers. Jai Rose did play for the Mariners under 21s team. They want him back, but I don't know how they managed to let him go in the first place. You can see why they want him back. He's been playing very well for the Wanderers. I reckon he's been playing well, better than the starting players of the Wanderers for the most part. I don't think it will happen, but you never know really. Scott Galloway has left Auckland on a free. He signed with Preston Lions in the Victorian NPL. And that kind of makes you think, Preston must surely have a great chance of winning the Victorian NPL this year. They've made some massive signings. They've got Lucas Tevere, Leighton Brooks, Amir Abdallah. He played for Sudan in AFCON and I believe he scored a couple goals there. You got to think of that along with the talent already in their team, such as Stefan Negro and Luke Jego, who is injured but he's coming back I believe for the season. Will they win the NPL Victoria title? It'll be a 3-horse race I think this season between them, Heidelberg and South Melbourne. And Preston Lions have a point deduction, 6-point deduction, because the fans got a bit feisty with their players. Next up, Nathaniel Blair has now officially left Perth. He was released by mutual consent to find opportunities elsewhere. You can see why. I wasn't really getting much game time ahead of Taggart and Lawrence and even Suleimani, and he was heavily linked with the Mariners, but it's not out of the realms of possibility that he comes back to the Wanderers, though I do see that being a bit unlikely because Wanderers don't need him at the moment. They need a serious striker, not a backup or a fringe player. Abdullah Faisal has left the Mariners. His post on Instagram definitely turned some heads. It says, "Unfortunately, my departure was out of my control. Decisions were made by the current management group who choose to operate from the shadows," and then bracket Halidi and his secretary Greg Brownlow, end bracket, "in a cowardly bullying manner. It is disappointing that my time has ended this way, but that is sometimes the reality of football." So I think Abdullah Faisal wasn't the best player in the Mariners squad, so it's probably justified that he was released. But if it was for in a bullying and cowardly manner, as he puts it, then that is disappointing to hear. He's gone to Al Kharma in the Iraqi first tier, along with Mohamed Altay. Altay's contract at the Wanderers was terminated because of a strained relationship with the manager, apparently, according to sources. It also says mutual consent, so I don't know which one it is there, maybe it's both. I don't know how it really works that way. Hopefully they both succeed over there in Iraq. Maybe we'll see them in the A-League again one day. But yeah, they're both signed for Al Khaimah. And now we've got managers. There's talks that David Drilic is going to China. He's going to the Chinese Super League. He's going to be Ross Aloisi's assistant manager at Zhejiang FC. We talked about Ross Aloisi going there last episode. So that's good to hear. He's been proven as an assistant. Obviously, when you tried to be manager of Perth Glory, that didn't go very well. He's going to be getting back into the management game that way. The 2026 World Cup is going to be hosted in USA, Mexico and Canada, and I'm very excited for it. I'm sure everybody else is as well. Even though they changed the format, they changed it for obviously no reason other than money. And you got to ask, if it's not broken, why fix it? Especially when it's just kind of working perfectly. 32 teams, round 16, quarterfinal, semi-final, grand final. It's just
perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
Kind of works so well together. There's no real need. One host country. The 2030 World Cup is even more of a money grab than the 2026 World Cup. It's going to be held in 3 different continents, and at this point you can only ask what went wrong. But what's even worse than all of that is that CONMEBOL suggested 64 teams for the 2030 World Cup. Imagine if we went from one host country with 32 teams to 6 host countries spanning 3 continents, 64 teams, only within 3 World Cups. That would be...
Oh my god! Oh jeez, oh my god!
What else could possibly be the reason for this? Because it's certainly not for the quality of football. You're going to have Cape Verde in the World Cup. That's not the reason, and it's not for the fans. If they want to go every game, which is impossible by the way, you'd have to travel 3 continents, across 6 countries for every game. You have to travel so much. What else could be the reason? I'm going to leave it at that. Alright, with that said, let's go into Australian squad prediction. For the record, I just want to say I'm doing what I think will be the squad, not what I think should be the squad. So I'm just predicting what I think Tony Popovich will choose for the 2026 World Cup. For the keepers, we've got Matty Ryan, Paul Izzo and Joe Gauci. I believe Matty Ryan and Paul Izzo are pretty much cemented in there. Joe Gauci you could kind of chop and change for Patrick Beach. For the defenders, got Jordan Boss, Aziz Bayic, Kai Rouse, Milos Degenek, Lewis Miller, Harry Suter, Cameron Burgess, Alessandro Saccardi and Jacob Italiano. For the midfielders, got Max Ballard, Patrick Yazbek, Aidan O'Neill, Cameron Devlin, Jackson Irvine, Paul Okon-Engstler and Alex Robertson. You could kind of change that around a bit. And then for the attackers, we've got Craig Goodwin, Martin Boyle, Mohamed Toure, Nestori Irinkunda, Adrian Segicic, Riley McGree and Connor Metcalf. Well, with all the players said, let's get on to the predicted lineup. We'll start at the back. We've got Matty Ryan in goals. I think you could kind of put Izzo on there, but I think Ryan is just the experience. You just got to have him in there. It'll be his last World Cup. For the left centre back, Harry Suter. The centre back, Cameron Burgess, and the right centre back, Alessandro Saccardi. That's been really solid, all of them, and I think that's the strongest back line. For the kind of left wing back, kind of left mid, whatever you want to call it, I have Jordan Boss. For the centre mid, I have Connor Metcalf. The other centre mid, Jackson Irvine. And the kind of what Jordan Boss was, except on the right, the kind of right wing back player, Lewis Miller. That's the best 4 in the midfield, I think. And for the attackers, left wing, I'll have Craig Goodwin. He kind of argues getting old, but he's just that class, never really leaves him. On the right wing, Nestori Irinkunda, he's tearing it up for Watford in the Championship. And up front, Mohamed Toure. So I think that's the best team for Australia. And before we move on to our next segment, I want to talk about a more specific subject about the World Cup. Lots of Australians have been getting riled up after America's celebrations of drawing us as the pot 2 team of their group. And I wanted to clear up the fact that it's completely justifiable to celebrate drawing us as a pot 2 country compared to the rest of the powerhouse nations in pot 2. The moment where celebrating that they've already won and the moment where anyone starts getting cocky is the moment where I think it's completely justifiable to get rolled up. Australia definitely can beat USA. FIFA doesn't want to see the host country get knocked out, so maybe we'll see them get the rub of the green, who knows. Next up is our A-League review and game week predictions. The Mariners smashed Adelaide 4-0. No one saw that coming. I personally thought Adelaide might have gone like a tight 2-0, 2-1 win or something like that. So that has just completely blown me out of the water there. Even though Mariners made that statement win, I don't think they're going to start magically beating everyone they play now. I think their form will definitely improve because it's got to mean something. This fixture from Matchweek 7 was played a bit early. MacArthur drew 1-1 with Auckland. I didn't really get to see this game live. I watched the highlights after. From what I saw, it was a good performance from both teams. MacArthur earned that draw against Auckland. Auckland, I think, are the best team in the league, and they always get results. Even if they draw in, they just don't really seem to lose. Matchweek 20, this fixture was also played early. Melbourne City beat Brisbane 1-0. I think Melbourne City just deserved to win that. They seem to be a bit more back in form. Obviously, the ladder can be a little bit deceiving because you see Melbourne City down like 8th place and you think they're bad, and then they win a game, they shoot up. As I talked in the first episode, it goes to show how close it is. I do want to say it is still so close and anything can really happen. Of course, it's kind of deviated a little bit more now. Brisbane, in Matchweek 12, they lost 2-0 to Auckland. I think Auckland just deserved that win. Brisbane have lost their last 3 games, but I don't really think that really goes to show for at least most of their performances. I think they'll come good. The way Valkanis has them playing in terms of the belief and such is brought to the club. But the club used to be just no fans, bad team, and it's just revitalised the club. It's revived them. We saw it at Redcliffe on New Year's Eve against the Mariners. How many fans turned up for that? You can't feel Suncorp. I don't think any A-League team can do that. That kind of goes to show why I think there should be smaller stadiums. For Adelaide, for example, they always look like they have a full stadium because they only have a 15,000 seat stadium. For our next game, Western Sydney Wanderers beat Melbourne Victory 1-0. They finally got a win. I was happy to see that. I didn't get to see the start of the game, didn't get to see the penalty, but from what I saw, Melbourne Victory was putting the pressure on them. Next up, Sydney FC beat MacArthur 3-0. I don't think the scoreline really reflects the game that much, but it was definitely convincing from Sydney FC there. Next up, Perth beat Central Coast Mariners 3-0. Another convincing win from Perth. They seem to be a really good team. Nicholas Pennington is scoring lots of goals. He's got 3 now. Lawrence has got 5 now. 5 or 6 players that have got 5 goals this season. 2 more games will be out by the time this episode is uploaded, but we'll be able to talk about them and lots of other things next episode. I think that'll do it for today's episode. Watchers, thanks for watching. Listeners, thanks for listening. I hope everybody had a good New Year's, and see ya.